Broadcasting from the heart of the nation, the next generation in conservative talk radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Why, yes, it is. What is up, my friends? Welcome into it. It is your post-Monday celebration. Great to have you as usual. Holy cow, what a day. And so it begins. Election season officially here. More candidates jumping into races around the nation. And when you look at the state of the Democrat Party, you just scratch your head and you're like, wait, what?
Say what?
Yeah, we will break all that down for you in just a moment. Plus, we have some votes coming up in Congress. We might actually get some policy things done. We'll see how that turns out, and a heck of a lot more. First and foremost, welcome into it. It's the Voice of Reason. I'm Andy Hoosier, broadcasting out of the heart of the nation in Wichita, Kansas, on our flagship radio station. But we are all over the country. So many great radio affiliates, and we continue to grow there. Plus, live streaming, podcasting, doing our thing like we do every single day.
Do it live!
Welcome aboard to the show. By the way, programming note for you. Oh, that looks rough. All right, we're going to have to work on that. So we have now we have a new computer for our video streaming, and we're trying to swap things out. So it was kind of a trial and error on whether this one was going to work or not, and it looks like maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to check the stream and see if it's actually doing the graphics the way that it's supposed to. But we're trying to upgrade things. This Windows 11 is ridiculous. Can I just admit that? Sorry, Windows, but you guys suck. We're just throwing it out there. Nothing's compatible like Windows 10 to Windows 11, and in the radio industry, we kind of have to keep up with somewhat of the times in order to keep things compatible. And doing a leap from Windows 10 to Windows 11, there's a lot of incompatible products and things that we have, our cameras and other stuff that now it looks like we're going to have to start updating. So we have a stream. It looks like it's working, but it looks like garbage. I'm completely washed out of it. So, yeah, we'll be working on some things. Bear with us. But it was a trial and error to see whether it was going to work in the first place, and it's not quite all full up to par. So that is where we're at on the programming side with the live stream. We do have our audio feed. That is not only on all of our great radio stations, obviously, but we do have an audio feed that goes down on our website at HoosierReason.com. You can go and check that out, and we appreciate you there. Also, we have our podcast that we upload every day, so if you miss any of the show or if you don't get a chance to listen at one point, just search The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on any of your favorite podcasting sites and do it that way. All right. Let's shift gears. Bottom of the hour, we have Faith Burns on the program. She is an energy policy expert and a senior fellow with our friends over at Americans for Prosperity. Not sure if you've heard the news, but a big win and a notch under the belt for the Trump administration again, going down to a record low average national gas prices below $3 a gallon. The first time that's happened in 4 years since the last time Trump was in office. So, hey, that's a big win. And as we try to drive down prices overall with inflation, that's a way to do it because the fuel and the expense of travel and transportation and everything else, that's a hardy piece of why we're seeing so much inflation. So that's a big win, and we'll start seeing the later response of all the other products coming down thereafter. We'll get to that and more with Faith Burns at the bottom of the hour. Big news today, though.
What's trending today?
And it's really not much of a surprise, but the crying, man, the snowflakes, the ridiculousness coming from the left side of the aisle. And this is not to mock them. This is strictly to just bring an awareness of the 30,000-foot view as an observer from the outside looking in, that the leaders, or the ones that are trying to be the leaders of the Democrat Party, they don't have a lot of thick skin. And while they try to criticize President Trump for not having thick skin and trying to sue everybody and criticizing anyone who criticizes him, he kind of has the right to. Because of everything he's gone through in the last 10, 12, 15 years of the media, the Democrats, just everybody going after him, the massive, severe TDS that continues to get worse in this nation, he kind of has the right to call out shenanigans. He kind of has the right to call out lies when they accuse him of just ridiculousness. But if he goes after anybody else, man, they melt down. Have you heard Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota? Have you heard him just go off the rails on Donald Trump because Donald Trump's been criticizing him for all the news that's coming out? We've heard about the 50% of fraudulent visas for the Somali community. We have the 33% of illegal commercial driver's license for illegal aliens driving commercially in the state of Minnesota. We have a lot of corruption. We have a lot of fraud, and it's all under the umbrella from Governor Tim Walz of his administration and what he's done to that place, and it's been a complete disaster. Trump calls him out. This guy gets angry.
Are you okay with the president calling our neighbors garbage
Are you okay with him referring to Minnesota as a hellhole, unfactually untrue? This creates danger.
Oh, wait, what?
And I'll tell you what, in my time on this, I'd never seen this before. People driving by my house and using the R word in front of people. This is shameful. And I have yet to see an elected official, a Republican elected official, say, you're right, that's shameful. He should not say it. So look, I'm worried. We know how these things go. They start with taunts, they turn to violence. So deeply concerned. Are you okay with
okay, hold on, stop. Hold on, wait a second. What did he just say? That the taunts turn to violence, that we can't have this kind of rhetoric because we can't be hating on someone, calling them names, mocking them because that leads to hate and that leads to violence. Did I just hear that right? Hold on, we got to play that last part again. Hold on here.
An elected official, a Republican elected official, say, you're right, that's shameful. He should not say it. So look, I'm worried. We know how these things go. They start with taunts, they turn to violence. So deeply concerned.
Deeply concerned. I really wish he had that kind of mindset for the past how many years now? Under the first administration, the 4 years in between administrations, the election last year when he was running as vice president with Kamala Harris, when they were saying that Donald Trump was literally a threat to democracy, that Donald Trump was literally a white supremacist, that Donald Trump was literally an authoritarian or a Nazi or a fascist or a dictator and was going to execute political opponents and throw members of the media in Guantanamo Bay. And even today, and during the shutdown that we saw not just a month ago at the federal level, when Democrats were saying that Donald Trump was in the middle of, it's not happening in the distant future, it's not a fear-mongering tactic, it's something that could happen down the road, it's in the middle of a tyrannical authoritarian transition to completely override Congress and for the dictator of Donald Trump to take over this nation and be a threat to democracy. I would think that all of that would be the taunting, the teasing, the violent rhetoric that would lead to violence that we've seen with 2 assassination attempts, one of them working against Charlie Kirk, that has been against Republicans, against conservatives, with the decapitated heads that we see of Donald Trump at different rallies. Now, all of a sudden, we criticize a Democrat. Oh my gosh, bad rhetoric, the R word, the really mean. I'm assuming I know what the R word is. I'm not going to say it on the radio, but I think I know which one that we've been talking about. One that we used to say quite a bit back in the day for disabled individuals, and then mocking them, and then, well, not mocking the disabled, mocking people by just calling them names. And then, I'm assuming that's what he's referring to. But now all of a sudden he's been called a name. He's been mocked. He's been criticized about his bad behavior. And this is the response that he has. I'm telling you, man, this is snowflake level 2.0. This is insane. Well done, Tim Walz. Well, could you imagine? He was the guy that was supposed to win over the alpha vote in the election of 2024. This was the guy that the Democrats and Kamala Harris had chosen to try and win over the masculine man, the alpha male, the guys, the males in this nation that have walked away from the Democrat Party because they were tired of being attacked left and right. This was Mr. Tough Guy that was out there talking tough, very loud, very vocal, originally from Nebraska, that went up to Minnesota and that became governor and wanted to be Mr. Tough Guy. The guy that had a picture of him out in the woods or out in the field in the camo and in the orange hat trying to go hunting. They couldn't figure out how to put a shotgun shell into a 12-gauge shotgun. That was the guy that was supposed to win over the male vote, and now he gets called a name, and oh my gosh, can you believe it? I've had people yell this derogatory term to me, and that leads to violence. I'm so scared, and Republicans aren't condemning it. This is the Democrat that hasn't condemned any of the hateful rhetoric and yet encouraged the hateful rhetoric against Donald Trump, which leads to
what's trending today.
Not that I want to focus a lot of time on him. I find that hilarious. It's very comical, but it just shows where the state of the Democrat Party is, because going into midterm elections 2026, we have a new announcement, and this is part of our election update.
Election update.
There it is. Announcement last night. We knew it was coming anyways with the tease, but Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from the state of Texas, now that she's losing her district in the redistricting, has officially made a new announcement running for the Senate in Texas.
The gloves have been off, and now I'm jumping into the ring.
Here we go.
I'm asking for your support to be the next United States Senator from the greatest state of Texas.
The greatest state, the state that she said everybody was racist in. She's, very, very exciting for her to represent that state as a whole now. Okay.
I'm running because I don't ever lose focus of the people and what we deserve. We deserve a government that is by the people and of the people, not one that's bought and paid for, not politicians who are self-serving and line their own pockets. Most of you know that I am a civil rights and criminal defense attorney. that I made a living arguing cases before juries and fighting for Texas who were harmed to receive justice. I have won cases and convinced juries in the deepest, reddest parts of this state. And I'm ready to make the case to the people of the great state of Texas.
All right, so that's the official announcement last night. Jasmine Crockett making that in the state of Texas, now wanting to not just represent her district that she's losing from the redistricting, but now jump into the entire state. And I gotta say it, good luck. I mean, good luck. You may have some support around the state, but it's an overwhelming red state of Texas, and the race-baiting loudmouth of Jasmine Crockett is not going to represent the state. We're going to make the prediction right here. I could be completely off, but
Andy's prediction.
I do not see Jasmine Crockett anywhere close to that. I know there's already been a candidate or two dropping out of the Senate race in the primaries for the Democrats because they think she has the momentum, that she's got the suave, I guess, or the character to try and win that seat. She's got aspirations probably to run for president at some point in her career, but this is wild. And as we look at the election updates, look, I mean, you now have to appeal to the entire state. And the race-baiting, ridiculous rhetoric, the loudmouth, hateful rhetoric where you've called every Republican member in the state of Texas racist multiple times. You've gone after Governor Greg Abbott multiple times for calling him Hot Wheels. And the only thing hot about him is whatever. I mean, I don't even know what she said. But it's ridiculous how she thinks that she can represent the state and have a viable chance. That's going to be the social experiment. They have this false sense of hope right now. They won with Zoran Mamdani. They won with, what's his name, Jones out of Virginia, the attorney general that had the text messages about wanting to shoot Republicans and have the kids watch or something ridiculous. Like, that's what's representing the party right now. AOC feels very empowered because her candidate won the mayor of New York City. They have this socialist revolution going on, so they think this is going to spread with messaging around the country when it's just really not. You won in places that were already very blue, and unfortunately the blue party has now been hijacked and taken over by the Socialist Party. But Jasmine Crockett does not represent anybody except for a select few that want reparations and that want to focus on black issues, which there's nothing wrong with that, but want to do it in a race-baiting kind of way and attack everybody else. That's her platform. She openly said what she wants to do with reparations.
I'd have to think through it a lot. One of the things that they propose is black folk not have to pay taxes for a certain amount of time, because then again, that puts money back in your pocket. But at the same time...
hold on. I love it. They can't keep a train of thought for anything. Democrats, progressives are the most hypocritical people I have ever heard in my entire life. Did you just hear that? One of the ideas she has is getting rid of taxes for black folk because that keeps the money in your pocket. Has that not been... hold on. I got to scroll through here. I got to make sure. Republicans, I got to go through the Republican platform here and the conservative values of what we stand for. Oh, yeah, it says it right there. The Republicans, we support lower taxes. Why? Because it keeps our money in our own pocket for us to invest in the private sector. That's a Republican platform. What is she talking about? Now she's like, well, we're going to do it, but only for black people because it's part of the reparations. And then she goes into it later. We'll play some more of that when we come back. But now she's advocating for keeping our own tax money in our own pocket because that benefits us because we have our own money and not giving it to the government. Oh, my gosh. Wow. But it's only for certain people. And this is insanity, man. The Democrat Party today.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. When reason meets radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
I'd have to think through it a lot. One of the things that they propose is black folk not have to pay taxes for a certain amount of time, because then again, that puts money back in your pocket. But at the same time, it may not be as objectionable to some people about actually giving out dollars. But obviously then you start dealing with the different tax brackets and things like that. And that's one of the reasons that, we argue the reparations make sense, because so many black folk, not only do you owe for the labor that was stolen and killed and all the other things, right? But the fact is, like, we end up being so far behind, right? And so it's like, how do you bring forth people? Exactly. And so it's like, if you do the no tax thing for people that are already, say, struggling and aren't really paying taxes in the first place, It doesn't really exactly.
They may want those checks like they got during COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah, they want that check like they do. Apparently, everybody wants new checks. They want redistribution of wealth. They want that government handout. So apparently, according to Jasmine Crockett, that we're going to not have black people pay taxes because that's a way of reparation. But then also we need to give money because if you're low income, then you're not paying taxes anyway. So therefore, the tax plan is going to be getting rid of taxes for black individuals and then paying out money as well, like we saw during COVID. You got to realize this is all about identity politics, and it's all about the push for eventually universal basic income. And by universal basic income, I mean there's going to be a tiered step based on what your gender is, what your race is, what your sexual orientation is. That's going to be the tier step for you on how many boxes that you check to be super duper special and a victim of society in order for you to figure out how much you're actually going to receive. If you're a white alpha male that's a non-gay individual, you're probably not going to get much money at all, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. Not that we want government money, but under their system, that's the way it would be. If you're a gay black individual that doesn't identify as a man or woman, but something is other, then you probably hit the pinnacle up there because you get the reparations, you get the identity politics, you've been a victim of society. Donald Trump's apparently abusing you by getting rid of all your DEI protections. So therefore, you're going to get the most amount of money in this universal basic system, and you're not going to have to pay any taxes because just like Zoran Mamdani has openly said that we're just going to pass off the property taxes and all these other taxes to the white communities. That's what we're up against. It's the platform of the Democrat Party has become so radicalized that you're not, as a member of the Democrat Party, if you're one of those blue dog Democrats, maybe the union member, the truck driver, whoever you are, that is not a recognizable party to you. By the way, speaking of Zoran Mamdani, he's in the news as well because as he's going through his transition team, he's apparently announced that one of the individuals on his transition team has an actual background of armed robbery. He's been convicted of it, and he's on the transition team focusing on, you're going to love this, the security of New York City.
We put together a team of more than 400 New Yorkers who are on 17 different committees, and these are New Yorkers who bring with them both a fluency of the policies and politics of the city, the places that they've succeeded, the places that they've failed. And we will take all of their experiences and their analysis into account as we build a city for each and every person.
I love it. So that's the justification, by the way. That was the question asked about him. Wait a second. You have a guy focusing on security in the city, and he's been convicted of armed robbery. What's your response? Well, I guess if anybody knows the system, it would be a guy that's gone through the system like that, right? So through their successes and failures, we're putting together this wonderful team. It's a beautiful political non-answer. I mean, that's a great politician's stance of we're just putting together this team, some successes, some failures, and that way they know the system better than anybody else. That's the response of Zoran Mamdani. So we have Mamdani out there putting individuals with convicted armed robbery cases on his transition team. We have Jasmine Crockett playing the identity politics running for the Senate in the state of Texas. Good luck with that one. You got Tim Walz that's now saying that bad and hateful rhetoric leads to violence against him, not against Donald Trump or something. Look, policy. That's what people want to see when we go into midterm elections. And right now, you ain't got it. When we come back, we'll shift gears a little bit. We'll talk about energy. Faith Burns will be on the program with our friends over at Americans for Prosperity. Lots more to get to. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Truth, reason, and common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Looked at the actual number of goods that were sold. There were less goods sold, but more money made because things are more expensive. That's actually what happened on Black Friday.
Data, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Cyber Monday, 208 million people bought online because the algorithms on all the platforms were the best ever. $1 extra billion of revenue. I know that because my companies were part of that success.
Revenue does not
$1
mean
billion more.
Money saved, though.
And also, you can cherry pick one economic stat, but the fact is, inflation has gone up since Trump took office. Unemployment has gone up since Trump took office. A lot of the macroeconomic indicators that people rely on aren't doing too well. So yeah, you can cherry pick small things like this has gone down, but when you walk to the grocery store, beef is
cherry pick this. We're 40 points off an all-time high in history on the S&P 500.
We do
the number one economy on earth. Are you kidding?
It's growing at a slower rate than it did under Biden.
We're
though.
number one on earth, and we're
Who's benefiting in that number one? I think it's
you are. Everybody that's retired is. Anybody
Trump
that
has
has any
crashed the market
savings
like
anywhere.
4 times.
All right.
I mean, how can you bash number one in the world?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right. So, yeah, Kevin O'Leary putting the beat down there on CNBC talking about the economy is now they say that, well, I mean, yeah, we spent more money, but we bought less items. So therefore, that should show that inflation's up so bad under Donald Trump that we just don't want to spend anymore and get more stuff. But we spent more money, but yet our money went less far. Yet we had a 30% inflation rate overall for the 4-year period under Joe Biden. They're not talking about that. That was a whoopsies. They want to miss that part. But we want to cherry pick because we talk about how people are spending more money, so they're confident about the economy. We're spending more money because things are expensive because we're probably buying better quality things, and yet they're very angry about that the stock market's the best in the world. By the way, talking about cherry picking as well.
What's trending today?
We have an announcement today that apparently gas prices are back to a 4-year low since we've seen in the past Trump administration, officially breaking the national average below $3 at $2.92. That is now 7 cents lower than what we had seen this time last year, and the first time that the national average has been below $3 in, again, the past 4 years. Are we on the right trajectory for the energy markets? Permitting reform is what's been the focus right now, trying to find more energy, more supply for energy, and being able to drill, baby, drill. That's where we'll go to our next guest here on the program. She is a partner with us over at the Americans for Prosperity, americansforprosperity.org. She is a senior fellow of energy policy with AFP. Faith Burns on the program today. Faith, how are you, my friend?
I am doing fine, thank you. And that is good news that you just announced.
That is great news. Gas prices back down to where they were when Trump left office the first time. So we're moving in the right direction, right, Faith? We're getting things back on track. We're trying to replenish the oil reserves. We're trying to make American oil the number one when it comes to OPEC and actually selling it internationally again. We're getting things back to where they're supposed to be.
We certainly are. And your listeners need to be aware that when President Trump came into office this second time around, he had a big hole to climb out of.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things that were done during the Biden administration that actually hindered and hampered energy production. So it does take time to do these things. And I was actually commenting the other day to someone that it's not even been a year that President Trump has been in office. And there are a tremendous amount of things that his administration has already accomplished in this short time.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Let's talk about some of the obstacles that we had to deal with when he came into office, because the Biden administration they got rid of a lot of drilling. They taped off a lot of areas that we couldn't actually produce energy. And then the gas prices started going up. So what did he do? He announced we're going to release 1 million barrels a day of oil to try and lower gas prices. We consume 22 million barrels a day. 1 million being released today did nothing for gas prices, and it depleted our energy reserves. So between that and all the red tape, what kind of hole did we have to dig ourselves out of?
Well, it was a big one, and it was not just in one area of energy. And if you obviously recognize, energy covers a whole lot of things. It covers electricity, it covers efficiency standards for home appliances, and it also covers oil and gas, and that includes drilling and exploration and all the work that it needs to be accomplished in order to get that fuel out of the ground and into vehicles. So at every level and at every federal administrative agency, it seemed like the Biden administration was putting up roadblock after roadblock after roadblock to prevent exploration and drilling. Yeah. So President Trump has issued a number of executive orders, and the secretaries of each of the agencies have been about looking at all those regulations and orders and land management plans and reversing a lot of those as best as they can. Sometimes Congress needs to step in, and they have, but the agencies have been very busy undoing what was done the previous administration.
That's really good news. Let's talk about some of those EPA regulations for just a moment. They put a lot of them in there. We essentially had that Green New Deal that AOC and some of the progressives wanted by default, just through regulatory governance that the Biden administration put in. Are we starting to see those go to the wayside to just allow the private market to flow a bit easier?
Yes, we are. And it's a start. If you will recall, back in July, the One Big Beautiful Bill passed both houses of Congress, was sent to the president. I think he signed it on July 4th. And that legislation revoked most of the subsidies for the Green New Deal. There are a handful of them that remain, but for the most part, most of them are gone. So that's step number one. Step number two is in the permitting reform space. That means now that we're still kind of tied up over here. Now what do we need to do to untie our hands and to unleash energy production? And that's where permitting reform comes in, and that's where the administration is doing a number of things with regulations, and and Congress is acting as well.
That's
they have
exciting.
a number of bills that would do that.
Yeah. Talk about where are we focused right now for some of the permitting reform. I know that the state of Kansas is actually where I'm based out of with our flagship here has been talking about permitting reform. That's a conversation going into our state legislature in January, in just a month from now. But where else are we focusing on much of this energy permitting reform around the country?
Sure. Well, I will tell you, a lot of states are talking about this, and here's why. This is, for the most part, a bipartisan issue because folks on both sides of the aisle recognize, hey, we can't get our projects to move forward. And we need all the energy we can get. Whatever your source of energy is, whatever your pet energy project is, we need all the energy we can get, particularly with the increased demand of AI that's coming down the road and large loads. So a number of states are looking at a number of different things to speed up the power getting onto the grid. And on the Hill, there is a piece of legislation called the SPEED Act that would actually cut through a lot of the NEPA barriers, and that it would set specific timelines that agencies would have to respond to in order to get permits through. And sometimes it's just the very simple things. If the agencies actually followed the law and what they were supposed to do, like if they had a 60-day turnaround time, if they actually responded within 60 days, not only would that be astounding, but that could help move things forward. And it's just, sometimes it's the very simple things that don't occur, but that needs to be spelled out in legislation so everybody knows what they have to do to get things moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Faith, talk about the demand we're going to see here soon. And we've talked about it quite a bit on the program, the growth of data centers, the growth of artificial intelligence, and how much energy this is going to need. This is insane. And as we talk about permitting reform for oil and natural gas, we're also talking about nuclear now. In fact, Parsons, Kansas, we just made the announcement here in Kansas, the first ever globally with a new company out of California, putting in a tiny mini reactor, a mini nuclear reactor, a mile down into the ground to see if nuclear is going to be the future here as well, which is really kind of exciting. How much energy do we need, and do you think we're on par to try and match the demands that are coming here relatively soon?
Well, how much do we need? I will use a very scientific term. We need a lot. And we need a lot more than we have right now. There are estimates that our demands are going to double and triple in the very near term. And how we meet that is honestly going to be a challenge. And none of us need to keep our heads in the sand. We need to look at this straight on, and say, okay, how are we going to fix this? Number one, I live in Northern Virginia, very close to Data Center Alley, where there are dozens of data centers out there. In fact, recently I flew in and out of Dulles Airport, and all the landscape out there is dotted with buildings, many of which are data centers. Wow. They suck up a lot of energy, and they take a lot of water. So the question becomes, how do we get the generation to actually be able to put on transmission lines and send there? Or do we allow data centers and large loads to bring generation with them?
Yeah.
And to have generation that operates totally off the grid, where it doesn't impact other customers, it doesn't impact the congestion that's on the grid now. Build a generation facility on that data center site. Allow that generator or another entity to put up transmission lines from the generation plant to the data center, and there you got it. Basically, it's plug and go.
Interesting.
And it's kind of like a data center bringing their own power with them. That's an idea. And that's something that not only the states, but the federal government need to take a serious look at, because there's nothing wrong with a data center bringing its own power.
Right.
And if that doesn't impact other people, that should be perceived as a win for everybody.
It's so wild the way technology is going, because now, I mean, we already see these tech giants, and we look at Google, we look at X or Tesla, we look at a lot of these different major companies, and they almost have like their own communities already, right? They have housing for a lot of their people. They have places to take their kids with nurseries. They have, food markets and everything else. It's almost like their own community. And now if we make them kind of net zero energy for themselves, where they have their own power plants that's off the grid completely, we're talking about essentially their own communities for these major tech places in the future, which is very strange. Faith, hang on the line. We got to take a break. It's Faith Burns, energy policy expert over at our friends with Americans for Prosperity, AmericansForProsperity.org, the nation's largest grassroots organization here in the country, which is absolutely amazing. When we come back, I want to shift gears and talk about the waters of the U.S. rule. What the heck is that, and are we seeing reforms through the EPA on that front as well? Right back here for a post-Monday celebration on The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. America's safe space for common sense. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yeah, truth, reason, common sense is what we do here on this program each and every day, trying to cram that 10 pounds of reason into that 5-pound bag, trying to rebrand the millennial generation, one radio listener at a time. By the way, programming note for you, we have ended our video live stream. It just wasn't working. We're trying to transition with a new computer, and thanks, Windows 11, you suck. I'm just, just throwing it out there. Everything's uncompatible now, so we're trying to get that going, but I was working on that today. We'll have some more on there. Hopefully we'll get the video stream back up and going tomorrow, but nonetheless, here we are ready to rock and roll. If you want more information on this and what we do, you can just find us on our website, HoosierReason.com, HOOSER Reason.com, or you can find our podcast on any of your favorite podcasting sites by just typing in The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Subscribe, listen to us. We keep rocking it. And by the way, we've already broken our record of the number of downloads from last year as a total for the year. We've already shattered that number, so we continue to grow. Thank you. We love you to death. That's awesome. Yeah. Well done. All right, we're talking energy policy right now with our friends over at Americans for Prosperity. Faith Burns, energy policy expert with AFP, AmericansForProsperity.org. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about the waters of the U.S. rule. And for those that don't know what the waters of the U.S. rule is, something the Obama administration came up with, thinking it was a great idea that once it rains really, really hard in a farmer's backyard in the middle of the country and it floods, it's now quote-unquote navigable waters where the government can regulate the water that's on your land because, well, it's navigable waters now or something, because you can put a paper boat down the river or something. So, Faith, we saw under the Obama administration, Donald Trump got rid of it the first administration. Joe Biden put it back in action. Where are we at now with WOTUS?
Oh, well, thank goodness this current administration has proposed yet a new definition of waters of the United States. And here's why. What we've got is, as you had indicated, there have been previous iterations of the waters of the U.S. regulation. There have been lawsuits and injunctions filed against a variety of WOTUS regulations. And currently today, as we speak, there are two different enforcement mechanisms set up across this country. So if you are in certain states, there is one rule that's being implemented. If you are in other states, there's a different rule that's being implemented. And to use yet another scientific term, this is a real mess.
Yes.
And the Trump administration recognizes that this is a mess, so they have proposed a new definition of waters of the United States. The comments on that are due January 5th. I expect a lot of people will probably be filing comments. And as you said, what it does basically is it looks at potentially puddles, like little bitty things that are completely separate from navigable waters where you could put a boat on. And one of the previous regs says, okay, that's a water of the U.S. And if you fail to get a permit to operate in that, then you could be charged up to $40,000 a day for each day of violation. And that could set anybody back, even our most wealthiest people in this country.
Yeah.
So what it has done, it has made people afraid. It has made projects, to actually be stopped, because who wants to risk a $40,000 a day penalty if you get out and steam your bulldozers up and try to move dirt. Nobody wants to do that. So what the EPA did prior to announcing this new proposed rule, they held listening sessions back in May. They had stakeholder groups in. I attended on behalf of AFP, one of the groups, and they actually had a recommendations docket where they asked people all across the country, give us your recommendations as to how we should fix this. And it seems like they are honestly trying to fix it and make it correct. One of the things we focused on is the implementation, because as we all know, we can have rules on the books, we can have regulations, we can even have Supreme Court decisions. But unless the folks going out from the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers actually follow the law and do what they're supposed to do and implement it correctly, we really haven't accomplished much.
Yeah.
So we need, as your show promotes, we need common sense reforms, and that is what this administration is all about. And that's what they're attempting to do with this new Waters of the U.S. regulation.
Well, thank God they're addressing it. I love the priorities that we've seen from the Trump administration so far on all of these factors, with deregulating the EPA, getting rid and drying up of some of these subsidies for alternative energies, trying to redefine WOTUS again, and hopefully we can make it stick and stay this way, because it's been an ongoing battle for one administration to another, and it's been a little frustrating. And I'm glad that they're actually wild concepts going out and wanting to talk to farmers and talking to people out in the streets to see what their thoughts are and how it actually affects them on the home front. What a wild day. It's Faith Burns, energy policy expert with Americans for Prosperity, AFP, AmericansForProsperity.org. Faith, keep up the fight, my friend. It's a big one. Energy is going to be an important issue. Let's get you back on and do it again real soon, my friend.
Thank you. Would love to come back anytime.
You betcha. Appreciate it. Back at it again tomorrow. Until then, be your own voice of reason. Be that catalyst for change. We'll see you back on the radio. Bye.